The chair will now entertain requests for 1-minute speeches. For what purpose does the gentleman from Tennessee seek recognition? The gentleman from Tennessee, Mr. Cohen, is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The CDC announced that there are now over 700 cases of measles in our nation. Measles was allegedly an old disease that wouldn't come back in 2000 because people got vaccinated. This is the largest outbreak of measles since, I think, the 1996 time. I unfortunately got polio in 1954 when the polio vaccine was being given to second-grade children. I was not in the second grade, but my father was giving shots as a pediatrician to second graders, which included my brother. He brought the vaccine home and considered giving it to me, but knew that it was outside of his charge, so he didn't do it. And I came down with polio 3 or 4 months later. My father and I both wished I had the vaccine. It would have solved and cured a lot of the problems I've had since and have even today. I ask each parent out there to make sure your children get vaccinated so that they don't get measles and that they don't spread measles to others and we don't have another terrible outbreak. Vaccinations work. I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from South Carolina seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute, revise and extend my remarks.
The gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, on Easter Sunday, at least 253 innocents were brutally murdered in Sri Lanka as a result of coordinated attacks targeting hotels and Christian churches. There were 4 American fatalities. The tragic Easter Sunday bombings are one of the worst terrorist attacks since September 11, 2001. At least 7 suicide bombers hit multiple targets, including St. Anthony's Shrine, within a short period of time of each other. The attack was clearly planned in advance, as well as 9 sites were targeted. ISIS has claimed responsibility for the attacks, and the safe house of the ISIS was raided by authorities on Friday. The American people stand steadfast beside the people of Sri Lanka in mourning and solidarity. We send our heartfelt condolences to the families of the victims, and we vow to never let the people of Sri Lanka or any country stand alone before the scourge of terrorism. In conclusion, God bless our troops, and we will never forget September 11th and the global war on terrorism.
For what purpose does the majority leader seek recognition?
I ask unanimous consent to speak out of order for 1 minute, revise and extend my remarks.
The gentleman is recognized for such time as he may consume.
Mr. Speaker, the shooting that targeted the Jewish community in the San Diego area this weekend was a heartbreaking reminder of the new challenges facing our country and the world in the 21st century. In centuries past, purveyors of anti-Semitism, xenophobia, Islamophobia, racism, and other vile forms of hatred employed the ancient tools of whisper and rumor and incitement in the village squares to intoxicate mobs with fear and fuel violence against those of a different race, a different religion, a different origin, a different color. Today, the internet and the social media have provided haters with modern tools to do the same incitement. We've seen it in Pittsburgh, in San Diego. We've seen it in Charlottesville, in Christchurch, New Zealand, in Sri Lanka. We've seen it in the viral images online using anti-Semitic tropes or painting Muslims as terrorists or vilifying migrant families. As a nation, we need to take action to counter these new forms of incitement. We are observing a lesson in how hatred has adapted to the 21st century. What we learn from that lesson and how we adapt to combat new tools of hatred will determine whether our democracy and commitment to tolerance and pluralism will survive this century. Mr. Speaker, I pray for the victims of this weekend shooting, and I say to them and their survivors who have been targeted by hate in our day, this House stands against hate and will continue to do its part to promote the vision of our founders, of a nation where all are created equal and endowed not by the government or the Constitution, but by their Creator, with certain unalienable rights, and among these are life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness. Let us all stand for tolerance, for inclusion, reject hate, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
For what purpose does the gentleman from California seek recognition? The gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
As we've all heard this weekend, our nation did experience another horrific attack on the Jewish people during Passover, this time in the form of a shooting at a San Diego area synagogue. This is something I'm afraid is becoming too commonplace, and even are we becoming comfortable with this type of violence against Jewish people around our country and even around the world. Multiple people were injured. One person even lost her life, Lori Gilbert Kay. Eyewitnesses claim she died while shielding the rabbi from gunfire, her friend of more than 30 years. Almog Peretz shepherded many children away from the gunfire and towards safety. Now, while most people understandably were fleeing this violence, Army veteran Oscar Stewart instinctively ran towards the gunfire, which froze the shooter while he was shouting and intimidating the shooter, which eventually chased him off. From there, off-duty U.S. Border Patrol officer Jonathan Morales joined him in the parking lot with a handgun and shot several rounds at the shooter's car, which made him continue to flee. There's no telling how bad this could have been had not these folks taken action like that. It was bad enough, obviously, but with Oscar Stewart, a good guy with a gun can stop a bad guy with a gun, and it happened in this case. Join me in praying for Lori Gilbert Kay and her family, for all those who were injured, and for those who stepped up and did heroic things that saved the lives of others. God bless them.
Pursuant to Clause 12A of Rule 1, the chair declares the House in recess until approximately 4:30 today. The House is in recess.